Well, hello everyone. Welcome to another video on the 67 Stang. So, in this video, I'm going to discuss some things I've learned along my journey of the last year or so working on the car, some lessons learned, maybe even talk about some tools that I realized I really needed that I didn't have, and try to help anybody else that is just kind of getting started on their own project car that maybe has never tackled working on an old vehicle like the Stang behind me here. It's a novice, a lot like I am. And I'm doing that really because this week has been, it's been crazy. So first off, I mentioned last week in one of the videos, I think, that I had thrown my back out. Well, it was getting a little better, and then I was taking my dog for a walk. He saw a rabbit, tried to take off after it. He jerked me and messed up my back again. So between that and work, I've been lucky enough during this COVID time that the company I work for, the Davy Resource Group, we're essential. We help maintain the power grid and keep electricity flowing. So I've been able to keep working, and they've been very great about allowing us to work from home and whatnot. So, but we've had a lot of projects kick off, and so that has really kept me from being able to work on the Stang. So not that y'all really care about all that, but as a result, and pardon the slippers with the sandals with the socks, I know that's horrible, very millennial of me, but these are kind of corrective things for my back, and they actually help. So that's why those are on, and I don't care. So anyway, with that, I'm going to go ahead and get started. What I want to do, or let me just catch up. I have done a few things with the Stang. I haven't been able to do a lot because of my back and the time with work, but I have done a few things. So let me show you a couple things I've done. So we'll start first with the instrument cluster, which is back here. So you can now see it is all together in all of its new shiny glory with the new instrument bezel. Got all the gauges in there. All the wiring is complete, and I did go through and check the connections between the various posts and the gauges and the plugs here to make sure that those were good. There was connectivity, so when I go to reinstall this thing, I don't catch any surprises on things not working. Now, I may still have some issues. Maybe I didn't screw a bulb in tight enough or whatnot. Don't really know of a good way to test that. If I had a 12-volt power supply and some leads with gator clips on, I could probably do it. I don't have those, but that leads me to a discussion for later in the video. So we got this all done. Very happy to actually have one part of the rewire of the car complete, was getting this done. In addition to getting, I already know we got the fuse box and all of that mounted in there. So very excited to put another checkbox on that project now. The other thing I have done is, y'all know I worked on, I shouldn't do that with my back. Oh, that was not good. Reworked on rebuilding the heater box. So got it all together. It's sealed up. All of the dampers are moving appropriately, apparently. I left the leak protector for my voltmeter. It fell in there somehow. Okay, I don't know how that happened. But what I did do is y'all saw in one of the last videos that I got the new blower motor installed. So, or got it in the mail. I got it installed on here. Got the gasket around it, so when I'm ready, this should just bolt back into the car. So very good. I even was able to test the motor here. That wasn't easy because I had to try to hook it to my dad's battery jump pack or whatever. But it worked. It was great. Very low noise. Much more quiet than the original one that was in here. So glad to get that in there. I did notice that these connectors here are not the same as on the original. So, but I've seen that before. I know that that's an issue. But we got that done. So that was another thing that we had. And also, set this back down. Sorry if I'm showing you on my backside. Also got this in. So these are all new control cables for the heater controls. So the things that open and close the various dampers on the heater box and the heater plenum in there. If y'all remember in an earlier video when I was taking apart the dash and whatnot, the original cables, this is actually what connects to the levers that are on the instrument, or on the dashboard rather. This had broken. One half of this had broken. So one of these cables was just flapping. Somebody had tried to tape it. That wasn't me. I think that was the owner that had it from 77 to 87. They tried to use duct tape to fix that. It wasn't very effective. So I got a new one of these from CJ Pony Parts. Put that back in the car for right now. Oh, I did want to do one other thing. So for the instrument cluster, you know that all those little blue bulbs or bulb lenses covers were pretty much toast. They had burned up over time from heat from the light bulb and all that. So I'd originally tried to order ones from CJ Pony Parts. They were on back order till July, and then I looked at National Parts Depot, who did have them in stock, but the shipping was going to be almost as much as the parts themselves, so I didn't want to do that. But I had forgotten that over not too far from me, well, I guess it depends on your definition, not too far, call it 20 to 30 miles from where I am in Conyers, Georgia, is a classic Ford's parts company or store, whatever you call it. Anyway, called Melvin's Classic Fords. And so I actually took a drive over there yesterday. That would be Friday because today is Saturday. And he had them in stock, and so I was able to pick those up from him. So thumbs up to Melvin's Classic Fords over in Conyers. If you're looking for some parts for not just Mustangs, but Falcons and Galaxies and F100s and so on, he's got them over there, going back even to Model A's, Model T's, and things like that. So good source here if you need it. So thumbs up to that. Okay. So what I want to do now that I've rambled on a lot about things is kind of, again, talk about lessons I've learned. When I first started in on this project car, a year and a few months ago, when it was sitting in my dad's garage, having not moved in 22 years, and having been the one that was driving it before it was parked, along with my wife and my sister and whoever needed an extra park time, I honestly didn't think the condition of the car was going to make it that hard to get back in shape. And to get it running, it wasn't. It took a few weekends. Part of that was because I didn't know a lot about what I was trying to do. I didn't know the full condition of certain parts. And I didn't know what to order and get, right? So, it took, I think, 3 weekends to get it running again. So that wasn't too hard. And it really didn't throw too many surprises to me because I had taken the time to watch a bunch of YouTube videos of various folks from Mustangs 429, and what is it, Thunderhead 289, and so on, to see what they were doing to get those vehicles running. And really that was what inspired me to even try to get the car going again. So that didn't surprise me. What has surprised me is I start getting in, now that I have it up here, is as I start projects. So, for example, the rewiring of the car, right? You think, okay, wiring, you know there's certain things you're going to need. Obviously, you're going to need a new wire harness, whether that's an original style, a factory style harness, or like I did, the American Auto Wire aftermarket harness or whatnot. So you think, okay, that's going to be there, so I'm going to need that. but you don't think of all the other little things that go with that. So for like tools, knowing you need a good set of wire strippers, wire nips, or cutters, whatever you want to call them. You're going to need a soldering iron and solder. You're going to need some sort of torch to do the heat shrink wrap connector type things. In my case with the American Auto Wire harness, it really helps to have that crimper tool, that special double barrel crimper tool on there. Having a voltmeter to test the circuit. I guess it's called a voltmeter. It's the things that has the leads on it. So, these are things you don't think about as a novice if you're just getting started on projects. That you think the major parts, but you don't always think all these auxiliary things that go in with it, which add to the cost. So, for example, I got the American Auto Wire kit right up there, and the kit itself was, I don't remember, 800 something bucks for the harness that covers the entire car. Okay, right? That's not a small chunk of change, right? So I got that, and then you get the crimper tool, which is 60 to 100 bucks. Okay, then you have to get a pair of nips if you don't have them, wire cutters. Well, there's another 10 to 15 bucks depending on where you get it and the quality you get. And then you need to go maybe get the extra connector group that I got, right? Well, there's another 100 bucks. And so these things keep adding up. And what I'm trying to get to for anybody that is new to doing this kind of work, and if you've done this before, these things I guess probably come second nature. But if you're brand new, these are not things you think about. And so I'm not trying to dissuade anybody from picking up and working on these project cars. By just the opposite, I want you to do it because honestly, it's not hard. These are great things to learn on. These old cars are, compared to a modern car like my F-150 over there, are extremely simple. So they're great to learn the basics about auto mechanics, about electrical wiring, about how an internal combustion engine works, a transmission, the rear end, and all of those things. So this is a great learning experience. I know I've learned a whole lot from working on the car. I've also gotten a lot more confidence in myself and what I can do by tackling things like the rewiring. But you got to think through. So like the floor pans, I've been trying to get my head wrapped around when I get to the point where I'm ready to work on the floor pans of the car, what else am I going to need besides the new sheet metal, right? Well, we already know I got a new welder, which I still haven't had the chance to play with and use yet. And so there's that, right? Of course, your other option would be to have somebody else do that kind of work, which you can do, nothing wrong with that. But to me, I'm putting myself into this car. If you watch other videos, this car is an extension of the family, with my mom and dad being the original owners of it, and then me driving it when I started dating my wife, and so on. So, I want to try to do a lot of the work on this old girl myself. I'm putting my blood, sweat, and tears into this car. So, but getting back to it, so I got the welder. Well, you get the welder, then you got to get the face shield, right, to block the brightness. Then you got to get welding gloves. Then, other things that are nice to have to go with that are going to be items to help, hold the sheet metal in place while you're doing the welding, when you can get a chance to get the tack welds in. So you're going to need either those, I think they have these little clamps, so you need clamps, or you're going to need magnets, or some combination thereof if you don't already have them. Also, if you want to do things right, you may want to prime things, so you have to get weld through primer. And of course, once you get it all in there, you're definitely going to want to prime it. But then you're also going to need seam sealer in there. And then once you get all of the floor pans welded in, that's just step one, right? Well, then when you get ready to do the full interior, get all the seats and all that, carpet and all that back in there, well, then you want to make sure you treat that floor you spent all that time on in properly, so that you don't get, you know, if somebody spills a drink in the car, you don't get that moisture back down in there to cause that rust again. So then you've got to start putting in some sort of additional sealer and soundproofing and heat proofing on top of that. And then there's a bunch of choices of, do you go back with some of the original style stuff, or do you go with something more modern, blah, blah, blah. Anyway, so there's a lot there that you need to consider. And that, I guess that's what I'm trying to get at is, I'm still learning, and as I get these projects in, I don't realize all the stuff that I don't have that I'm going to need to have. So what I thought I'd do really quick now is I'm going to go gather a few tools that I've picked up while I've started doing this project that I think will be very beneficial for you to have, that I would recommend having, and I'll try to point out ones that I say are, in my opinion, an absolute must, versus things that are just nice to have. So I'm going to gather a few of those up, and then we'll bring them out here and I'll discuss them and talk about them. And I hope you're not bored with this video. I really wish I could be doing the car, but my back just won't let me. So with that, let me go get the tools and we'll get back at it. Okay, so I've got a bunch of tools right out in front of me, and I'm going to try to approach this as if you have no knowledge, never done mechanical work, maybe even never worked with tools in your life. So if you are a professional mechanic and you've done this kind of stuff before, then feel free to shut it off, or better yet, leave some comments and advice down below to help others, right? That's kind of what I'm trying to do this for. So I'm going to start with some of the obvious, or what I would consider obvious ones that others, you may not think about if you've never done this before. So first, I've got a bunch of different screwdrivers down here. You want to make sure you've got a good set of both flat blade and Phillips head screwdrivers. For these old cars, that's pretty much what you're going to find. You're not going to typically, unless somebody has modified it, find anything in the way of square head, star head, that kind of thing. So a good set of both Phillips head, flathead screwdriver of various lengths. I've got 3 different lengths. I've got a fairly long and big one here, a medium size, and a very short one. Because there's going to be tight areas, there's going to be other areas. These also work as pry bars, is what I've used them for, depending on what you're working on. So you definitely want to make sure you get a good set of screwdrivers. The other thing that kind of goes with that is sockets. Okay, so I've got a pretty good set right here. Now this is actually my metric set, and I only brought it out because, well, they were all in one tray and I didn't have to fish out a bunch of separate standard sockets. But you want, again, traditional size sockets and deep sockets in here. There are going to be times we're getting in there where the bolt is really long, where you're trying to get the nut, you're going to need the deep well sockets. Other places it's going to be too big, you're going to need standard sockets. You're also going to need extensions to go with this for your ratchet, and again, various sizes of extensions. So really long ones, really short ones. I would also add getting some of the universal joints that kind of rotate would be beneficial. That's one thing I am lacking, that there are times really I wish I had. But you definitely want a good set of sockets and a good ratchet, a good ratcheting wrench. Don't cheap out on getting the cheapest ratchet you can find. You want a good one that's solid, because you're going to have to be dealing with bolts on these old cars, some of which haven't come apart since the car was manufactured. So you need something you can reliably put torque on that won't break, shatter, and mess up. So that's true with this. The other thing I would recommend, now these are 12-point sockets on here. I would actually, for the most part, try to get 6-point sockets. The problem with these is they will often round off a bolt more easily than a 6-point socket. Most of these are 6-point. nuts and bolts that are on here, so do that. So, you got sockets in there. Let's go on to another related item. You're also going to need some good combination wrenches. There's going to be places where you can't get in with a socket, so you're going to need a traditional combination or box end open end wrench. So that's what I've got here. Now, the other thing I would recommend is you have traditional ones where both ends are fixed, and then you also have these that will ratchet. I would try to get one, at least one of each size. Again, keep in mind with these old cars, if you're working on American-made cars, your Fords, your Chevys, your Mopars, DeSotos, Studebakers, whatever, most of those are going to use English measurements, standing at your inches instead of millimeters and centimeters, right? That's metric. So in most cases, you're going to want the standard size, or SAE, I think is what they call it. Size. So a good set of both the fixed ones and then the ratcheting ones are good. These are wonderful. I use these all the time. So that's good. And I say get at least two of each size, because often you're going to have to be holding on one side of something and using a wrench on the other side to move it. And this one holds the other in its place. I did that a lot when I was doing the brake lines. If you saw those videos where you had to put a wrench on one side of the coupling and another one on the other side to get it to break loose. So a good set of wrenches like this. That was there. Also, kind of with the same thing with the sockets and the wrenches, a breaker bar. So what is a breaker bar? Well, it's a really long handled wrench that goes on a socket so you can get more leverage, or to quote Johnny Depp, get better leverage on it. And so I've got, this is one example. The longer it is, the more leverage you can get on it. I tend to use this, and then I actually have a pipe, a steel pipe that I can slide over this to make it even longer if I need more leverage on there. You do have to be careful with some of this, because if that bolt's really rusted in there or not coming out, you know, something like this could easily round off that nut. So speaking of rounding off things, they make sockets that will help you with a rounded off bolt. If you have a screw head that's rounded off, which is is not unusual with these old cars. I've got this what they call speed out kit that allows you to take a screw head that has been rounded out, whether it's a Phillips head or square head or whatever, and this will help you extract it. I use this a good bit on some of the screws on this car. I think especially on one of the mirror screws had gotten rounded off. I was replacing the mirrors on there, so this is a handy tool. This isn't necessarily a must-have, but it's definitely a good-to-have tool. Everything I've talked about so far, I would say, is a must-have. So we got that. If you happen to break off a bolt, have to drill it out, or maybe the hole is so rusted you have to drill it out or reline or whatever, a good tap and die set is a nice thing to have. So I've got this one here. So I used this when I actually installed the passenger side mirror. This car did not come with a passenger side mirror, but for safety reasons I went ahead and added one. So I used the tap and die along with another tool I got that actually puts in a sleeve that crimps into the door. And then this tapped out the sleeve. So that sleeving tool, I don't know that you necessarily is a got-to-have thing. You might be able to rent one, but I've got one just because I thought I might need it later. But this is definitely something. There's been many times where I've needed this tool. So set of tools. Set up. And sometimes just to punch things out or to get a hole started, you need a punch. So definitely a good thing to have is a punch. So I used this when I was doing the fuse box in the car to mark the location where I need to drill the holes for that. I used the punch, and there's various types of punches. This is just one example. Let's see, what on to next? Hammers. Okay, so you see I got a bunch of hammers here. I've got a rubber mallet. I've got a little, I think, 1 pound maul. I've got a ball peen hammer. I've got a traditional carpenter's hammer, I think it's a claw hammer. Again, having a good selection of hammers of varying sizes. A brass hammer is another good thing to have. I don't have one of those. I do have a set of body hammers as well. You know, different heads on those, flat heads and rounded heads and things like that. So having a good selection of hammers, I would say these 4 are got to have items. Some of the others, like I said, the body hammers, the brass headed hammer and whatnot, are nice to have, not got to have. Let's see what else we got. Oh yeah, an impact wrench. So this is a battery operated impact wrench. I also have an air powered impact wrench. So for those stubborn, hard to get off nuts and bolts, this not only tries to turn them, but it hammers them, thus the name impact. And that vibration of hitting them helps jar rusty parts loose. So this is good, plus it gives you some power when getting things off. You do have to be careful when using these with standard sockets. Standard sockets aren't designed to take the force that an impact wrench can deliver. So often they do have impact specific sockets that you probably would want to get. I have some, but I don't have a lot, so I've been using my standard sockets. They've held up so far. I've not had anything break, but it's probably best. And definitely when using this tool, it's good to have eye protection on, especially if you're not using the impact sockets, because you don't want that flying off. To kind of go along with that, a good electric drill for drilling holes. You can also use it as a power socket to pull off bolts and things like that. Of course, one of the other things is you can put a wire brush attachment on there to pull, rusty, to derust. Anyway, derust sections of the car that can't come off, like floor pans and those kind of things and whatnot. So that's a good part, which also leads to these. Nice collection of wire brushes. So I've got these. These are brass. I think this is steel. Then I have another big, heavier duty bristled brush. But again, these are for cleaning, getting rust off, and other parts. And I get various sizes, again, to get into different places and whatnot. So you want a good set of those. Those don't have to be expensive. Also, kind of with that theme, some sort of good cutter, box cutter or utility knife, whatever you want to call it. Use this one for opening boxes when you get new parts in, right? That's always fun. But you can also use it to cut, vacuum lines or hoses, those kind of things. I was using it this morning, so when I finished putting together the instrument cluster, y'all may remember in the take-apart video there was foam that went around the switch lever for the wipers, and that just disintegrated, right? The original foam was in it disintegrated in pieces. Well, actually I was able to use this, and I found some foam. It was actually, for those that saw the Harbor Freight blasting cabinet video, you may remember there was a roll of foam that came with it to help seal things up. Well, I still had some of that left. It seemed to be the right thickness and all that, so I actually just cut strips with this to make it fit. So that was a good thing. So I already mentioned earlier when working, I'm talking about the wiring in the car, a good voltmeter. I think that's what this is called. My wife calls it the electric power tester thingy. So yeah, get you a good electric power tester thingy, voltmeter, ammeter. I don't know really what you call this thing exactly. Should know, but anyway, if you're gonna do any electrical work on the car, you want to test your battery and whatnot, this is a good tool to have. I've been using it a lot with the wiring on the car to just make sure as I'm crimping things and all that, varying connectivity between my crimped attachment or crimped terminating part, whatever, back to the other end, which usually is terminated in another factory installed connection or whatnot, with that. So anyway, this is another, I would say this, if you're doing electrical work, this is absolutely a got to have in there. certainly. The impact wrench is certainly nice to have. It'll make your life easier, but a lot of times you can get the same work done with a nice breaker bar and a good set of sockets as well. So there we go. Let's see, a couple other tools, and I'll try to insert some pictures here because I shot some video of this, but it didn't turn out great. But other tools, a bench grinder. So I've got a DeWalt bench grinder, not something I even thought about needing, but if you're going to be taking parts off and want to clean them up and then paint them and all that before they go back on the car, that's a wonderful tool to take small parts and get rust and things off of them, screws and whatnot on there. Also it has other things like you can put a stone to sharpen blades and stuff like that on there. So a good bench grinder. Of course, it's best if you mount it to a bench, or they actually make these independent stands that you can put them on as well. So it's mobile, which is one of the things I'd like to have. I don't. A good vise. So I've got another vise. Again, I'll try to stick a picture of it in here. It actually was my grandfather's vise. So that's kind of wonderful, just more family connections. But he had it when he passed away. My dad got it and sat in a cabinet in his garage not being used. So he gave it to me a few weeks ago, and I've got it cleaned up and got it mounted back there, and it's come in handy so many times for clamping something down so I can clean it with a brush or need to drill a hole in it. Or I've actually used it to help shape things because it's got some kind of curves and things that I can use a hammer to kind of hammer against to get a good curve on it. Or to flatten something out, it's got a flat hammering section to do that with. So it's not a super big vise, the one I've got, but you definitely want a good vise there. Y'all have seen the video about the sandblasting cabinet from Harbor Freight that I unboxed and put together. That is definitely a nice to have thing, not certainly something you absolutely have to have, but if you're trying to get in and clean some of those parts like you saw on the heater box that have weird curves and bends, try to get in there and clean. You could use sandpaper and maybe even some of these small wire brushes to get in there. It's very labor intensive. I popped it in my blasting cabinet, well, David's that I'm borrowing, and clean those things up really, really quickly. Very happy with that. I still need to do a review of that cabinet because there are some downfalls to that, but I'll get to that later. Oh, yeah. So all of this I think is really good tools I didn't think of necessarily that I wanted to include, and I keep looking off into my over my toolbox is to see if there's any other big things that I can think of. Oh yeah, oh God, I can't believe I didn't do this. Hold on. Here are two other tools you definitely need. So if you're going to be working on these old cars, you need a grease gun. So here's a grease gun I have. My dad just gave this to me yesterday. This was off of a 53 DeSoto that my grandfather bought new back in 53. And this came with it because he got the European package or something. Although he was here in the States, he was in the Air Force. But he got the European package, which included this grease gun, apparently, from what my dad told me. So, but you'll need a good grease gun to grease all the ball joints, U-joints, and what other things throughout the car. So you're definitely going to need a grease gun. I'll let those go. A jack and jack stands. So you need a good floor jack. You can pick them up at Harbor Freight, I know, for like 89 bucks or whatnot, something to help get the car off. Don't just use the scissor jack that came with the car. And then jack stands. So this is one of two jack stands that I got back when I was in high school, and I first actually started doing some minor things to the car, like brakes and stuff like that. But you definitely want a set of these, a minimum of two. They usually come in a set of two. If honest with you, I'd say get 4 so you can have all 4 parts of the car up in the air at one time. Just get the whole car up. Sometimes it's just easier, especially if you don't have a lift, to get up and do certain work on the car. So good set of jack stands, definitely something. That's a absolutely positively gotta have thing. Do not work on the car with just the jack underneath it. That is just horribly unsafe, and one of these cars coming crashing down on you is not going to be a fun day. So, make sure you get this. Also, I'd say with that, make sure you know where to jack up your car. I have to be careful how I said that, so you don't do damage. I have noted some damage I did to this car jacking it up with the floor supports. I did not know that wasn't a place you should jack, so now I've got some ripples in the bottom of those. Luckily, nothing's bad. I think I'll be able to knock those out once I get the old floorboards cut out. Be able to push those back in or back out or in, whichever way I go with hammering them. But just keep that in mind. You don't want to mess that up. Okay. So with that, guys, we'll go ahead and call this a video. I just wanted to share some lessons learned and things that I picked up over the year plus of working on this car. As I said, I'm a novice, so for those that are mechanics, this is all probably second nature, and you're probably laughing at me, but I know there's a lot of folks out there that are going to be getting a project car for the first time. They've never done this stuff, maybe, and these are things that if I had known, I've gone through and picked up a whole bunch of stuff over time. So again, hope you liked it. If you did, make sure you subscribe to the channel, give the video a thumbs up or a thumbs down, and we'll see you in the next video.